And then we see the keyboard player who switches to a very, I have to say, plasticky looking sort of lap steel guitar. It looks
Yeah.
like fucking Fisher Price or something.
Yeah. Yes.
But it was so odd looking. It really doesn't
Yeah.
look like, my first steel guitar, age 6.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles Governor, hardest job in the world. My name's John. His name's Andy.
It is.
It seems to me I've heard that song before. It's from an old familiar score. I know it well, that melody. It's funny how a theme recalls a favorite dream, a dream that brought you so close to me. More on that later. But first, we have music to enjoy. Andy, you're up to bat, as you like to say, when you're coming from your game around us. What have you got in store for us today, please?
Well, a lot like you, just kind of like we went back and dug up some wand. I'm going to go back into a band that we've covered once on the channel, but I think deserves another go. And that is a band called Murder by Death. Do you recall the song Riders that we did by them?
Yes, I do. I remember talking that it sounded a bit like Bored to Death and thinking of comedy stuff and the film reference. And but I remember the song. It was to me, it was like a atmospheric Western landscape waltz in places.
Yeah.
And I really love the way they put it together. I do remember it.
Okay, great, terrific. Well, also taking a page out of your book, since you just gave me a live KEXP joint, I am going to give you a live Audiotree joint. So this will be their song called Big Dark Love. And it is an earlier track from sort of the era that you listen to Riders, that track Riders. This is, some years before that. So please go off, give this live performance of Big Dark Love by Murder by Death a listen, and let me know what your second go is like.
Well done.
Cool.
I sit at my table, I drink from my cup, I gaze down the stairwell, flip through the telephone book, I spit out the window, oh, it hit someone.
This is really interesting because I can remember the previous song, and this is a very different sound. I'm struck by a couple of things straight away. He's got this almost, he's only done a few lines, but there's almost this awkwardness to his delivery. He says something about sitting at his table and he drinks from his cup. Fair enough. And something about, was it a telephone book? So there's kind of sense of banality to it all. And you've got the drummer just sort of tick-tocking. It's like the second hand of a clock. And it all feels very sort of humdrum. It's interesting. And then just then, if I hadn't have seen it, I'd have thought that sound was quite reedy, raspy. I'd have thought it was almost a saxophone. But it was she bowed exactly the same time on that cello. So I don't think it's got some sort of effect on it, but it's really interesting sound. But yeah, interesting. I'm just gonna have to bring that back because that was really odd.
I drink from my cup, I gaze down the stairwell, flip through the telephone book, I spit out the window, oh, it hit someone. Isn't that fun? but it's not.
Sorry, that's really the way he said, "Oh, isn't that fun?" It's like the complete opposite. There's no fun or enjoyment in this delivery at all, which makes it even funnier. And you've got these keys that are sort of plinking. It almost sounds like rain. Just the whole thing feels very sort of banal and grey, like he's stuck in a shitty room. But yeah, and putting that picture in your head in the first 30 seconds, that's really effective.
Not enough. I got the bends, I got the shakes. It never ends, it always aches. In the night, in the cold, it comes on, pain like a steel line, cuts like a dog knife. Are you awake? Can it come over?
Nice steel guitar.
I know it's a big dark love. I know it's a big dark love.
Nice.
Shakes, it never ends, it always aches. In the night, in the cold, it comes on, paint like a steel line, cuts like a dog knife. Are you awake? Can it come over tonight? I know it's a big dark road. I know it's a big dark road. I know it's there.
Oh, I probably just stopped it a bit. I was about to say that sound, that sort of resonating electronic sound, it's really odd and not like nothing that's come before. It almost sounds like it reminds me of an alarm or some kind of malfunctioning machinery, but it's not a good sign. The last there on the cello is bowing shorter and quicker as well, and you get the feeling that it's going to build and change. Just go back a sec. The bit there before where there's still up guitar was playing with the normal guitars, well, the two together sounded really nice as well. Just go back up.
It's a big dark road. I know it's dangerous. It's my big dark road. Let me in with my big
Tempo change.
road. Let me in my love. Let me in
Death on Audiotree Live.
That was a great live performance, actually. That second half of it changed tempo. And it was driven all by the drums. There's the pounding, and then there was like the odd shot, and it just reminded me. First of all, he's saying let me in," with my big doll love. These are not words you want to hear. And I'm just thinking, no, I wouldn't let you in. But it kind of reminded me of somebody just pounding and knocking on the door, and then like the fills is just somebody standing back and shaking their arms, shaking their fists. I was left at the end with the image of Big Bad Wolf, which I think perhaps that's a sort of metaphorically the character he's portraying. It didn't sound great from the start. This is not a hot prospect. No. The character that he's described. Yeah, this is really interesting, really well done. Certainly different from the other one as I remember it being this sort of lovely, wide, expansive, almost Western epic feel. And this had a certain tension and drive that ratcheted up. Yeah, his delivery, I didn't really get it from the other one, but watching him do it, it's clipped almost in certain ways. I liked it when he expanded and started really sort of almost, hollering at one point. So it was great to see that difference as well. Something about his the way he delivered, especially that first bit, I thought was quite fascinating. It certainly looked awkward and almost disjointed. But yeah, really interesting. I didn't get much. There wasn't a lot of lyrics. It's like he's in some shitty place and he's drinking from his cup and a telephone book, and isn't it fun? And then there's this big dark love, and he had eggs and shakes, and then let me in. No, thank you. But the big question in my mind is, what the hell was that on the keyboards? Was it a big ball of wax? And what the hell was he doing with it? Because he definitely had it in his hand at one point as well. Well, for those answers and much, much more, we have to go back and chew it over with Andy.
All right, welcome back. So, what'd you make of the Audiotree performance? What'd you make of the song? Give it to me.
Yeah, this seems really obvious, but the first thing to note straight away is the singer. So I guess actually watching him perform rather than the previous video, it crystallized some vague feelings that I had before. It's really interesting to know, and I don't think I picked up some of this from the previous song. I remember it now, but not all of it. There's an awkwardness to his delivery, particularly at the start. And you know what it was, and you'll think I'm insane in the membrane, as someone might once have put it. But it's like a clipped Willie Nelson about his delivery in that first part of the song. It's just really odd because it doesn't sound like, but it's just the way the words, it's just something about it that gives me that.
I get listening. It is like it's like listening to one of the Outlaws croon. So because they didn't croon, they were country western singers, but the way he's like a drink from a cup and like the way that croons out, but it's in the voice of like a young Johnny Cash or Willie Nelson. So it's like really weird, but I like it a lot. I'm like, oh, this is different.
I do. It's fascinating, but it's clipped. It's short. He doesn't elongate any notes at all. So it's just all this really, and that gives it that awkwardness.
Yeah.
But I have to say as well, before I forget, and he's a lefty, so extra points from me for that. But I was quite fascinated with him. So usual disclaimer about the lyrics passed me by. Luckily, there wasn't very many of them. But I did notice, however, that he starts with some really banal lines. Something about he's at a table and he drinks from a cup. And there's a telephone book. And then the way he says, "Isn't that fun?" It's so unfunny. It's hilarious. I mean, it's just the absolute opposite of fun,
Yeah.
And it just made me chuckle. So at this point, we also have the gentle sort of tick-tocking of a second hand from the drummer. So it's time passing, and you get some keys which sound almost like raindrops.
Mm-hmm.
So all of us gives it this sort of humdrum mise en scène. You know, it's so different from the wide open plains of the previous song, but it's still painting an atmosphere really succinctly and efficiently. I
Mhm.
mean, in terms of exposition, you always talk about sort of like in film, like the greatest ever exposition of a film is Rear Window, because within 10 seconds you get the whole backstory that he's a photographer.
Yeah.
He's a smashed up camera, the wheel coming towards the photograph, and there he is lying with his leg in plaster. You know exactly what's happened without a word being said in that pan shot, as opposed to Basil exposition in Austin Powers, which is a great, yeah. So, and again, this is like that. I'm picturing a scene. He's in a fairly shitty room. I'm thinking there's not much going right. It's kind of bored and a bit awkward and clipped, and it's really sort of downbeat and humdrum. It's raining. You can hear the clock ticking, and he's drinking from a cup. And it's just, brilliant the way it's all put together so
Yeah.
quickly. Really enjoy that. We also have, I don't know what point he says, but there's like about the fourth or fifth line. We then get the cello, which has a really interesting sound to it. Now, there's this sort of, she just does a long, but there's this reedy, raspy quality that if the camera hadn't shown her bowing, I'd have thought it's a saxophone.
Yeah. What the hell am I
100%.
listening to? Yeah.
Exactly, which is just really interesting. So I don't know what effect they've got on it, but yeah, that was just startling. So it carries on and he reveals some of the ailments. I think it's Ben's Shakes and Aches, which is a great name for for a dispensary. um, the drums kick in properly at this point, and as they do, we pan across to Madam Cello Player again, and we get a lovely shot of the massive fucking hole in her cello at the top, which I think just adds a bit of character to it. And then we see the keyboard player who switches to a very, I have to say, plasticky looking sort of lap steel guitar. It looks
Yeah.
like fucking Fisher Price or something.
Yeah. Yes.
But it was so odd looking. It really doesn't
Yeah.
look like, my first steel guitar, age 6.
Yeah.
But it sounds great. And it has this air of country melancholy to it as well. Just that natural shorthand for, oh no, woe is me, sort of thing. It's in there. So then he referenced the title line a couple of times, and there's a little sort of drum splashette before the lefty guitar starts his motif, which is really, really nice. And then he's joined after a bit by the steel guitar, and together they sound really nice together.
Mhm.
We get this second round of I Know It's a Big Dark Love, and here it starts to get more interesting sonically. So it's already sounding great, but there's a certain sort of downbeat overall feel mood to this. We then get this high electronic resonating sound, and I couldn't see where it's coming from. I thought they'd put another effect on the fucking cello. I did at that point. I didn't know, but I'm sure it's come from the keyboard. And it's this kind of sound that's associated with something wrong, whether it's an alarm or in my mind, it was a bit of machinery that's about to go seriously wrong. Yeah. Keyboard man donates some backing vocals as well. And then the cello lady starts bowing shorter and shorter and more rapid, which is always a big flag saying something's about to change. And so it does. So led by the beat of the drums, the tempo changes. And then the electric guitar is strumming these riffs. And he starts to demand, let me in with my big dark love. Yeah, instinctively I'm thinking, don't. Danger, Will Robinson. It's not a sort of tempting phrase. Let me in with my big dark love. Yeah. So the drums and the keys build until the singer is almost screaming, let me in. And the drums get really expressive here. So you have this pounding for the sort of bass drum. And then he just knocks every now and then. And these fills as well. And it was like someone pounding on a door and then stepping back and shaking their arms and fists a bit as well. So you get all that expression from the drum. He did a really good job. He didn't go OTT, just enough to convey this stuff. And then we get this really, I don't know, it was slightly unsettling. This higher keyboard melody comes over the top. And then we rock out for about another 20 seconds or so. and then we finish. So by the time we finished, I had in my mind the image of the big bad wolf just trying to sort of huff and puff and blow down your door.
Of course.
This was a great live performance, and it was very interesting to hear a different side to what I heard from the band from the previous song. I would need some more listens to decide whether I like this more, but I certainly liked it. I really liked his vocal performance, particularly this weird clipped, awkward beginning, and which then became expansive as he came, and he's almost howling at the end. So yeah, but my big question in all of this is, was that a ball of wax on the keyboard, and what the fuck was that there for? Because he had it in his hand at one point and kept moving this ball around.
It's a skull shape that's resting on his keyboard that you see him pick up at one point.
Yeah,
I thought it was a shaker because it's like about the size of like a hand shaker. Those typically egg shaped like shakers with things inside and that kind of give you that maraca like effect. But I didn't see what the hell he did with it. I don't remember hearing any like, oh yeah, there's a shaker there. But it was about the size of one and it was the shape of a skull. That's all I got from it. So
well, the thing is, I bought a load of. Do you get them in America? They're called baby bells. They're like miniature versions of edams. So they're small. They're about that big, and they're encased in red wax. And inside is like a cheese.
Oh yeah,
and you sort of peel it. But what I did is I had a whole fucking bag of them, and so I kept every bit of red wax and put it together into a big ball of red wax, and it's incredibly satisfying because obviously you leave it and it goes hard, and then you start in your hand and squeezing it, it gets warmer and more pliable, and then mash into someone's face and whatever. But yeah, and it just that looked like a white version of that to me. So I don't know if I wax. They say, but yeah, it was. I really enjoyed this. I thought this was awesome. Very good.
Awesome, man. I'm really glad you liked it. Yeah, really cool tune. Kind of wanted to show you something of like 5 or more years before. Just give you a different glimpse into their sound. Really cool live performance. I find all of it's just an interesting little lineup they've got going on. With the one guy being an incredible multi-instrumentalist, but you've got this, interesting singer with his interesting delivery, and the cello is kind of like a key point to their music and their sound. Just really cool sound to them, and you don't get much goth country. And this is kind of what they've the niche they've cut out for themselves, which is really cool. And their sound is so atmospheric and cinematic. That you can just you can imagine it being on all these awesome soundtracks to these great films, because it just has that sound to it, you know what I mean, that lends itself to these really powerful visuals, I would think. But yeah, I'm really glad you like the second go around with them.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you just saying that then, that kind of reminded me of the other sort of people who have that, lend it to it, that sort of kind of similar sound, which is really successful in a certain TV series, is it called The Hanson Family? True Detective. They did that song, which is fucking awesome. And you can imagine this sort of stuff going well with that as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, okay, since we've obviously covered the band on the channel before, so I'm just going to do a quick recap of them and then kind of get more into this album, this song. And I'll link our previous reaction to the description down below. If we do some more stuff by them, we'll end up getting a playlist, I'm sure. So, quick recap of the band as featured on this track and this album, on which it appears that shares the same name, Big Dark Love. We have Adam Turla on guitar and vocals, Sarah Balliet or Balliet, I'm not sure how she pronounces her name, but she is the woman on cello. David Fountain on keyboards, mandolin, banjo, trumpet, flugelhorn, and backing vocals. He's credited for in this album. Then Dagan...
Ball of wax.
Yeah, Ball of Wax, of course. Yes, how could you forget it? Dagan Togerson on drums and percussions, and Matt Armstrong on bass. So they've grown to become a 6-piece band at this point. At this iteration of them, earlier in their career, they were only a 5-piece, I think, at this point. Now they've incorporated Emma Tiemann into the band, and they've swapped out Matt Armstrong for Tyler Morse, who has taken over duties on the bass. So, the band was formed in Bloomington, Indiana, and has released 11 studio albums and 5 EPs since the year 2000 when they formed. Their sound has been described as alt country, goth country, indie rock, and indie folk. Big Dark Love, this album is their 7th studio album and was released on February 3rd, 2015. On Metacritic, this album has an aggregate score of 75, while Elmore Magazine graded it an 84 and Exclaim scored it a 9 out of 10. Unfortunately, that aggregate score for Metacritic was likely affected by Pitchfork having scored the album a paltry 5.8 out of 10. So, if you want to know one example of many reasons why we hock a loogie every time we bring up those bastards, it's stuff like this. It's stuff like
Sorry, Andy, can I just I came across an article on the internet the other day, and it was somebody bitching on about all the 3.6 scores that Pitchfork give really good albums. And it's just so funny.
Yeah, it is. They're rat bastards, and I had never really even thought of it about it. And I know that in time I've been like, man, what are they thinking? But doing this channel and like constantly going back and looking at all these songs and albums I like and seeing how Pitchfork is always like the stick in the proverbial mud. It's like, assholes. So anyway, Pitchfork notwithstanding, the album was received very well by most critics, with Cole Waterman of Pop Matters writing this in his review. Continuing the trend of their prior records, Murder by Death continues to expand their instrumental repertoire. While Sarah Balliet's alternately mournful and ominous cello remains their ace in the hole, newcomer David Fountain's array of banjo, keys, mandolin, trumpet, and flugelhorn add incalculable depth to the band's palette. However, despite such new additions, the group maintains their goth-tinged brand of Americana alt-country. Even the presence of a synthesizer on several songs is used to imbue valued texture rather than jar the listener. So I think this kind of underscores how they expanded their sound a little bit on this album to incorporate a lot more instrumentation, different instrumentation, which, I mean, just on this track alone, I know it didn't have the horns or anything, but that slide guitar coupled with the keys and everything, and what the cello was doing just added such lovely texture to the song. Like you had mentioned, the way the steel and the semi-hollow were kind of commingling together. And then the voices of those guys playing it started to commingle together, and it all sounded really, really great. Waterman would then go on to address this track we listened to today by writing, the title track opens with the minimal, rickety percussion and sparse keys. Turlough relates his first-person yarn of a misanthrope bogged down with mundane tasks and spitting out his window at a passerby amid lo-fi production. Big Dark Love sounds as though it were recorded in a muffled tin room. One might initially think this a mistake, but its stylistic deliberateness emerges on the clearer and foreboding refrain, I got the bends, I got the shakes, it never ends, it always aches. The changing fidelity is used to a great effect in putting you in the narrator's isolated and tortured psyche, leading to his terrifying demand to be let in somewhere with his big, dark love. Joseph Earp opined in his review for Renowned for Sound, title track Big Dark Love is the album's most successful track. It mixes the darkness of Murder by Death's past sound with the slightest touch of pop, and it really works. Big Dark Love could easily rub shoulders with Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds' Murder Ballads and Isabel Campbell and Mark Lanigan's Hawk as a truly shining example of the disturbing love ballad genre. Kevin McMahon of Consequence wrote, this album examines love and desire through different lenses, offering interesting perspectives on loving to excess, not wanting to be a burden, and even unconditional love coming up against personal morality. So let's jump into these lyrics. I sit at my table, I drink from the cup. I gaze down the stairwell, flip through the telephone book. I spit out the window. Oh, it hit someone. Isn't that fun? But it's not enough. I got the bends. I got the shakes. It never ends. It always aches. In the night, in the cold, it comes on. Pain like a searing light. Cuts like a dull knife. Are you awake? Can I come over tonight? I know it's a big dark love. I know it's a big dark love. I got the bends, I got the shakes. It never ends, it always aches. In the night, in the cold, it comes on, pain like a searing light, cuts like a dull knife. Are you awake? Can I come over tonight? I know it's a big dark love. I know it's a big dark love. I know it's dangerous. It's my big dark love. Let me in with my big dark love. Let me in, me and my love. Let me in with my big dark love. Let me in, me and my love. Let me in with my big dark love. Let me in, me and my love. Let me in with my big dark love. Let me in, me and my love. So, more from Waterman of Pop Matters. Let me in with my big dark love. Adam Turla intones repeatedly on the latest Murder by Death album. Here he assumes the role of the big bad wolf, which I believe is exactly what you referred to him as, with the instrumentation swirling around him to ratchet up the tension and force. Rather than tender swine, the narrator is banging on the door in search of compulsive sex to fill his id, more of a carnal menace than a paramour. In a wonderful effect, one easily begins to cower from the sound of this music, aware of one's pending victimization. It's fitting, then, that this record takes its name from the song featuring the aforementioned quotation, Big Dark Love. So yeah, you had given me that Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds song where he very much was this big bad wolf, and he had this almost lupine.
Grinder Man, yeah.
Yeah, Grinderman, exactly. Oh no, I'm sorry, that wasn't Nick Cave in the Bad. It was Nick Cave, but yes, it was Grinderman. Sorry, thank you for the correction. But my point it still maintains where it was like there's definitely some similarities here in the vibe, the dirty vibe of this as there was in that. And I thought, oh man, if we're gonna follow up on listening to these guys, this is the track I'd love to give John. So thank you so much for giving this a listen, man. I really do appreciate it.
It's great.
I'm really glad you liked it, man. Thank you so much. Guys out there in the listening audience, please let us know what you thought of this track, what you thought of the Big Dark Love by Murder by Death. Please, anything to remind you of anything else, whatever, hit up the comments field. It's there for you guys. The only price of admission is just kindness, and we do appreciate it. Also, please like, share, and subscribe if you'd feel so inclined. We're trying to continue to grow the channel, and we cannot do that without you guys, particularly you new guys that are coming along. Please join. The water's fine. All that out of the way, hopefully John and I will see all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. See you later, guys.